Hello and welcome to the 8th Krafty Max Originals BeadALong. I'm going to show you how to make a peyote bracelet and do fringe and a clasp. Now, in your kit you will get a pattern from me with all the colors. The first thing that I recommend you to do, and it's just always easier for me to break it down into smaller amounts, so I do 5 rows at a time. The only exception is the first technically 3 rows, but the first 2 rows on the chart. So I go down and every 5 rows I do a line, and what this does is help me to remember where I'm going to stop. So if you want to go ahead and go down your chart all through the pages, it saves you from having to do it later, and go ahead and mark every 5 rows. Then you can set your chart aside for the moment and grab your thread. Now, the easiest way to actually thread this, which by the way, your thread is called Fireline. It is 5 pounds. This is what I traditionally use for about 90% of my bead weaving. I do not use this on the loom, but everything else is pretty much the 6 pound. I'm so sorry. If you want to either use your fingernail or squish it through your teeth and make a little flat wedge on the end of the Fireline. Now, Fireline is very strong, and it's kind of hard to get through the needle. As you saw there, it kind of bent. So if you take it and squish it in your teeth, it'll flatten out and usually slips right on. What's that old saying, the watch pot, right? When people are watching. So you want to thread on the Fireline. Now, I would suggest you not do, especially if you're a beginner, much more than about a 3-foot section, which is about from tip of finger if you spread your hands all the way out. Now, once you get a little more used to the thread and used to beading, if you want to do a little more, that's fine, but don't go too much over that anyway. It's a hassle to stop and start, but it stops it from fraying and getting weak, which of course you don't want, because then your bracelet will fall apart. So what we're going to do, now that we've marked our lines, and as you can see, I have my beads out, and you're going to want to put them in the order that is on the chart, and all the numbers will correspond, okay, is do what I call pulling the rows. Now, I do 5 rows at a time, with the exception of the first couple rows. So I'm going to show you how to pull the first, technically 3 rows, but it's the first 2 rows on the chart. Okay, the first number is how many. The second number is which color. So the parentheses means 6 number 3s. So you do 2, 4, and 6. And if you don't have one of these nice little scoops, you can find them at any arts and crafts or hobby store. Even Walmart usually carries them. If not, fingernails work great. I've even seen people use table knives, like butter knives. Okay, now number 1, or 1 number 2, 8 number 6s, so 2, 4, 6, 8, and I know my hands are kind of getting in the way as I slide them over, but then I'll get them out of the way. Now 21 3s, and of course that's our background color. So we have 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 20, and 21. And then we're going to do the second row, technically the 3rd row. It'll make sense if you haven't done peyote when I show you how the rows work. If you've done peyote, you can probably skip to the next video or 2. 12 number 3s, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12. Now, if you notice, the pattern will say left and right, R and L. We're actually not going to really pay attention to that because we're going to flip our work each time. 3 6s, 1 1, and 2 3s. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and set aside my pattern and pick up my needle and my thread. Now you'll have 2 ends on this. You'll have what's called a working end and your dead end. The dead end is the longest end, and what you want to do is actually wrap it around your pinky 4 or 5 times. You don't want to cut off circulation, but you don't want it to be able to slip. Okay? And if you have a little tail sticking out like I do right here, you're going to either want to wrap it or kind of tuck it up underneath. And then you're just going to kind of squeeze that pinky in so that it's out of the way of that thread. You still have all your fingers and main fingers to use. Okay, so now what we're going to do is you always work from the left to the right. Same with doing the pattern and pulling the beads. You always pull from the left to the right. We're just on this first row going to pick up all of the beads. Takes a moment to pick them all up. And what we are doing, by the way, is called 2-drop peyote. And what that means is that we will be picking up 2 beads for every stitch, or each drop will be 2. Okay, so we're going to look at this kind of like a written page in a book. You just added your row from the left to the right. Now we're going to pick up, again from the left to the right, 2 beads, and this is how you do peyote. You're going to skip the first 2 beads and go in the next 2 beads. So you technically have 4 beads right now on this little loopy part of your thread. Now don't worry too much about getting it at a perfect tension, because you will unwind your pinky in a little while and you'll wrap that end in. So it's not a problem if it's a little too long. Just don't make it too short. You will need to make sure that you're able to put a needle back on that, what's called dead end. The other end is called the working end, and that's the working tail, and that's the tail that's still hanging out there off your needle. So if you pull them tight, and sometimes it takes a little bit of arranging, you'll see that you get almost like this little tree looking thing on the end. Okay, let's see if I can get it up a little closer. There you go. All right, so that's our first stitch. The next is pick up 2, again from the left, and you're going to skip 2 and go through 2. And what we're doing is we're creating the peyote step. And the way I like to remember it and the way I teach it is that you now have ups and downs. Okay, so pick up 2 more, skip 2, and put it through 2. Okay, keep going all the way across. Pick up 2, skip 2, put it through 2. Now, as you go a little faster and you get a little more sure of your needle and thread, you can actually pick up 2 or 3 sets and then pull your thread through. I wouldn't do it much more than about 3, because for one, you don't want it to get tangled, and the other is that you don't want your thread to be worn badly by pulling it and having to struggle with it to get through the beads. Okay, so picked up 2, added 2, pick up 2, added 2, picked up 2, went through 2, picked up 2, went through 2, picked up 2, went through 2. Now, if you counted the beads right and you put the beads on right, then what this means is that at the end you will go through 2. Okay, and what this means is that you're doing what's called even count. That means that every single row you do will have an even number. So if your pattern, say, calls for, let's see, ours is 14, 15, 16, ours is an 18 count row. So there will be 18 beads. No matter which row and which way you're going, there will always be 18 beads across. Okay? Now, for video time, I'm going to stop this video and then go to the next video, which will show you how to pull the next 5 rows. So, if you're happy with this and you're comfortable, by the way, do not tie any knots. Just leave this loose and leave this wrapped around as support until we get a little farther, and then we'll wind it back in. Okay? So if you're comfortable, go to the next video. If you have to, pause it, rewind it, and watch it again.